Morning. Can everybody hear me?
Good
Karen?
morning.
So we got volunteered.
Voluntold.
Voluntold. Yeah, so my name is David Mackless, and this is Karen Mastriani.
Hey.
And even though we have different last names, we're husband and wife. We work together. We'll talk more about that a little bit, but yeah, they had asked us to come and talk about something. So we kind of created a situation that we want to keep it pretty relaxed and comfortable, so that's how we're going to kind of handle this. We'll have probably some group discussion that we can kind of break out a little bit. But they wanted us to kind of be here to be available to maybe for questions or answers if anybody has anything related to the center, because I think I don't come a lot on Sundays, but I don't recognize a whole lot of faces here.
How many are new? I met a couple of people that, oh my goodness. So raise your hands again. Oh, nice.
Okay.
Welcome. So let me just start out by saying hello, good morning. This is not typical. Whoever greeted you probably told you that. We have just a vibrant center with incredible teachers. We have 2 geshes. We have 3 nuns who are here and a 4th who's on loan, we say, to Florida. So to have that many Sangha in one center, we're one of the most successful centers in the U.S., I think internationally, right? You have lots of experts here. So feel free to ask questions and we'll have them pipe in. And then it's fairly empty because we're having this huge retreat in Black Mountain right now. And so most of our book supplies are there, and most of our Gampa supplies are there as well. So you need to come back when it's it'll end at the end of this month. So you'll see a different center when you come back.
Yeah, the word
yeah. So Elise said everybody thought today was going to be canceled because our Geshis were going to come back and forth from Black Mountain and decided not to, and then they hated to cancel the center, so they opened it kind of at the last minute. So it's good. We're glad it's open. Not so glad to be sitting up here, but
So we tried to pick a topic that we thought was appropriate to Labor Day, and thought about how to bring practice to work, taking your practice to work, making your job your practice, if that might be another way of kind of looking at that. So Karen and I, like I said, are husband and wife. We work together. We have been in business since 1993, and we do safety, health, wellness, health promotion for different organizations. But we've tried to take what we've learned here at the center and apply that to our work, into our business as a whole, for the most part, in as much as possible, in the way we work with our clients and the way we treat our employees. So, you got anything you want to add to that?
no, not right now.
Okay.
Unless you wanted to talk about B Corp right now, or
Yeah,
just do
and
a
I'll mention that.
meditation
We can
first.
talk about that. Well, let's do the meditation
Yeah.
first. Okay.
So those who are new, you want to sit in a comfortable position. If you're in a chair, you can sit cross-legged, just like you do on the cushion, or feet flat on the floor. The key is be comfortable, but you want your back straight, and you want to be grounded on the floor. So if you're in a chair, try not to lean back into it, but sit up straight and relaxed. Hands can be just comfortable in your lap. In our tradition, the right hand is usually over the left, but any comfortable position for you. Then I invite you to close your eyes. And if you're not comfortable closing your eyes, leave them open, but just turn your gaze downward so that you're not distracted by the room or the lights. You're not looking around. The idea is to begin to focus inward. So take a few deep breaths. And use these just to settle your mind. Begin to settle your thoughts. And then let's just do a focused attention on our breath. So just return your breath to a normal, relaxed breathing for you, just a normal rhythm. And then you can either just focus your attention on the tip of your nose as you breathe in and out, and just notice how that feels. Is it cooler coming in? The air's cooler, tickles a little bit. Is it warmer as you exhale? Or focus your attention on the rise and fall of your belly. Just follow that rhythm. And as thoughts come up, and they will, that's what our mind does, right? So perfectly normal. But we're trying to focus our attention and practice concentration. So notice when you have a thought, let it float by. Try not to follow that story the best you can, and then return your attention to the breath. If you're really distracted, you may find it helpful to count. Each exhale and inhale is 1, and you can focus on the count. And if you lose count because you followed a thought or a storyline, just start back at 1 again. There's no race. The practice is catching when your mind drifts off, and then bringing it back to the object of your attention, which right now is the breath. And now just for a minute or so, try to notice the space between the exhale and the inhale, or between the inhale and when you exhale. And just notice that space. And those of you who've been practicing meditation for a while, try to rest your mind in that space the best you can. And when you lose that concentration, return back to the breath and try to notice that space again, and then sit there in that space when you can. And just think about why you came this morning. You could have done anything else, but you chose to come here, either for the first time or coming here often, knowing that we weren't going to have a regular teaching today, but you still came. And just think about that intention. And try to get from this what you need and leave anything else that's not very helpful. And you can just slowly bring your attention back to the room. I found a great quote. Now I won't be able to find it. Some of you may be familiar with the 16 guidelines if you've been coming here long enough. You can tell, obviously, I don't use it very much. There's notes in all the margins. But the quote is, "Do you have patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself?" And this was Lao Tzu in China who said that quote. And that's kind of what you do when you meditate, and then what you try to bring into your practice as we begin to talk about how we can make work our practice.
So I guess that said, this topic will kind of come up again too, right? Thich Nhat Hanh's new book, was it? No Mud, No Lotus?
Yeah. I don't know if it's a new book, but yeah. It's the latest one I'm reading. It's kind of new.
So there's opportunities around, and without those opportunities, there's really no growth that's going to take place, right? So we need to have those, I don't want to say confrontations, but we need to have the mud out there that we can work with. We mentioned just before the meditation the B Corp, and there's a growing movement, and this started a number of years ago with a kind of a conscious capitalism movement that's taken place. Some of you may have heard that term before. Or have any of you ever heard of B corporations? Okay. So a B corporation is, historically we had not-for-profits like churches and the Red Cross and organizations like that. And then we had for lots of profit, right? Kind of had the two extreme business models out there. So the B Corp model started a number of years ago. And the concept, again, is something that business can be used for a force for good, not just for profit. So part of the structure when you create a B corporation and you decide to move that direction is you have to look at who your stakeholders are and not just your shareholders, and build your whole corporate structure around doing some sort of good. So it's either a social advantage or an environmental. So some of the more common B Corps would be like Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's.
Method Soap.
Method Soap. And then there's still a lot of companies too that have become more just conscious capitalist companies where, like Tom's Shoes, right? You buy a pair of shoes and they give a pair away. There's a new diner, I think, in Durham that they set up. And this model setting is cropping up all the place too.
Yeah. No, it's in Raleigh, downtown Raleigh.
So okay, so you
Did you hear about that?
You pay what you can, right, for your meal.
What's it called? Did you? It's a place at the table. Yeah, Place at the Table. That's the name of it.
Yeah.
They're in other communities, but they put one here.
So those models are starting to kind of crop up, and we're kind of diehard optimists. We think that things are going to kind of move that direction. We'll see whether that's true or not. So. Anyway, we became B Corp in 2013, and we kind of continue to push that ahead. But that's really it's that understanding that's kind of allows us to be able to move some of this practice into the work that we do on a daily basis. Now we have the advantage that we're husband and wife, so it's not like, um, yeah, I'm battling it alone, right? So or Karen, so we're kind of in that boat together. So
Yeah. That's the advantage and the disadvantage, though, right? Because well, I wasn't going to say because we're battling it, but yeah. But if it's not successful, oh my gosh, there's no other money coming in. Um,
as a husband and wife.
as husband
Yeah,
and
yeah,
wife.
yeah. So we're kind of all in. Um, so the concept of work is something that's always fascinated us for a long time, and I've always been intrigued by it. And try to remember the poet Gail Gibran. Is that his name? Did I pronounce it right? There you go. Thank you. He's from Iraq or something, right? All right. He talks about work, and work is love made visible, right? But a lot of us struggle with our jobs for various reasons. It might be coworkers or boss or lack of clarity and a number of different things that happen there. But it's all out there, and it's an opportunity for a lot of practice if we decide to kind of delve into that and do that. So, you got anything you want to add to that so far?
Nope.
We were talking about possibly maybe breaking up in some small groups and just having a little bit of discussion, and then we'll kind of pull it back together and share some of the thoughts. And what we want you to do when we kind of break up like this is I want you to, in your group, discuss what is work. What exactly is this thing that we call work? And how does that differ from this thing that we call play? And how do those things compare, and what are the difference between those two things? And I don't know if it's something that people have thought much about or not, but we'll give you an opportunity now to kind of think a little bit about that. So, what do you think?
Yeah.
Groups of, I don't know.
4 or 5 at the most, maybe.
Yeah.
So everybody has an opportunity to talk. So you can turn around, get up, move. Well, you have to get up and move, sorry.
Did you have that? I turned my speaker back on. All right.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Huh. Chris, do we want a microphone for people?
Okay, did you get it? Chris might have gotten one ready. Thanks, Dave.
You don't have to go back to where you were necessarily. We may end up having another discussion depending on how time goes.
All of our
was,
go ahead.
That was a plan.
Yep.
Go ahead.
All of our sessions are recorded, and so when you speak out or ask a question, we will pass around a microphone, because if you don't use the microphone on the recording, it's just silence. So.
So how was that discussion? Did you all solve those problems? Come to a good answer? It's real clear, right? It's real clear. Just as a side note, I was in a human resource conference a number of years ago, and it was a pre-conference, and it was supposed to be on spirituality, but this was the first question that we raised, and we spent the full 2 days never getting beyond that discussion on what is work and what is play and stuff. So, anybody want to share any thoughts that you had, or points that were made? Lise?
We talked about how the work, whether you enjoy it or not, the intention is to provide a service or do something for other people. And it's also a form of bartering, that you are accomplishing one kind of a task or a skill for other people, and then you either get payment or other kinds of barter to fill out the needs, all the other needs that you have, to live.
Right.
Whereas play, the intention of it is to benefit yourself primarily, ideally, is to benefit yourself. And then, of course, we talked about how work can become playful if you're enjoying it.
Okay.
But your intention really is to be providing a service or a skill for others, and in exchange for the skills that you need to round out your life.
Okay.
And play can become work if you keep doing it, whether even when you're not enjoying it anymore.
Okay.
So it's about enjoyment, intention and enjoyment.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the difference between work and play is the intention of outward versus to self.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to share from their discussions? Here we go.
So we had a nice big group, and I think one of the things that kept coming up was finding the balance of work and life, work and play, and a number of us were fortunate enough to have a nice balance, and some struggling with how do you get to that balance, because of course there's things you have to do for work, whether you like it or not. But again, making sure that you're not sacrificing the other part of the balance of the play and your family and your children and your schooling and all those other things, and finding that kind of equilibrium between the two.
Okay. So it's a matter of balance. Balance
I
between
think-
work and
Was
play.
that pretty good? Okay. Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Big group.
We concur.
Good.
I think one of the differences between work and play is in work, people are organized into large groups, which means maybe a whole lot of things are done not in ways you would personally choose. Like if you're a school teacher, there's all those thousands of parents, and then there's the county commissioners and the school board, and on and on and on, and they've all decided you're going to start school at 8:02 a.m., whether you like that or not, and you're going to go on this day and not that day, and on and on. So in order to produce the benefits of the activity, you give up a lot of self-control. Whereas if you're playing, you just get up in the morning, and if you feel like taking a walk to the park, you do it, and that's play.
Okay.
You do it on your schedule, if you want to or not. It doesn't matter if it's 9 or 10 or 12 in the morning. It's mostly just up to you.
So it's a matter of control. If I'm in control, it can become play, or it is play. And if someone else is in control, or at least that's a component of it, is what you're saying. Okay. The less
I'm seeing a red light here.
yeah.
This
The
battery
less
is up.
control there is.
Yeah.
We go
So
through
yeah,
a lot of batteries.
the less control you have, the more it is work.
The more it becomes work.
Anybody else have anything else? So we talk about this all the time and struggle with it. And so even when we broke you out, we started saying, well, is this work or what about this? And thought about a whole lot of things we hadn't even thought about.
Yeah. It's a major part of everybody's life, right? Their work. And trying to find that balance that you're talking about. And you know, that intention that we bring. Some of the things that we discussed. So I know in the past in the HR group, the question came up about like professional golfers or tennis players or something like that. Is, you know, for some folks playing golf is play. If that's your job, does that change the
Like what you
perception?
said.
Right? Does that change it, right? Though they're still doing it for themselves, it may not become play anymore because there's this self-imposed kind of thing that goes along with it. We were talking about our grandson that's got a toy lawnmower, right? Because his dad does some landscaping, so he's, you know, that's play for him. He's trying to work. And our daughter, even like when we washed dishes, when she first started doing that, you know, it was play. At some point, it became a chore.
I
It became work.
videotaped her saying, I love doing this and I'll do it anytime you ask me. And I said, can you repeat that?
Yes, let's capture that one.
It didn't work.
Yeah. So that concept of work and play is kind of just in our heads for a great degree. Two examples that I'll give here quickly. We had, when I was working on some research, I was interviewing folks. One of the guys I interviewed was working at a pharmaceutical company and making a drug, and it was a job, right? You know, he got an okay pay. He didn't particularly like his boss. Some of his workers were jerks. Some of them were okay. You know, it was a job. That's what he did every day. And his mother became ill, and she was required to take the medication that he was making, right? And that was what's going to keep her alive. So as soon as his intention of that job switched, where now he's making this drug for his mom, it changed everything about the way he approached his job. There was absolutely nothing physically in the environment that changed, right? Same jerk of a boss, all that stuff was the same. It was just the intention that he brought to that work that changed everything. Pay, everything was the same. And another person I talked to that was a home builder that was looking forward to retirement, finally retired, and then he went to work for Habitat for Humanity. So he went from swinging a hammer for money for swinging a hammer as a volunteer, and it increased the joy tremendously in what he was doing.
Maybe because of control and, you know, choice, right? Because most of us don't have a choice whether to work or not. But
so there's situations all around us that you know we can choose. We can make choices. Something we heard recently in a blog, and I'm going to probably get this wrong, but you know, it's all activity. Mm-hmm. And this is, I think, where the Buddhist practice comes in. It's all activity. It's really dependent upon our perspective of that activity and the intention that we bring to that activity, whether it becomes something joyful or something burdensome.
yep,
you know?
that's what provides the meaning to that experience is what our intention, what we bring.
Anybody have any thoughts about that, or want to expound on that a little bit, or have any experiences? Yes, sir. John? That's just so people can hear.
So the thought that occurred to me is work can be play or play can be work. And I think the difference that struck me through this conversation was, are we fighting and are we resisting what we're doing, or are we surrendering to it and allowing it just to flow and just to come to us? You know, I was thinking about the golf analogy that you mentioned, and I've struggled with golf for a long, long time. And, you know, sometimes I just don't feel it, and I'm hitting the ball crazy, and, you know, I'm about to take the club and throw it up in the trees and stuff. And there can be other times where, man, I'm in that zone, and I'm in that flow, and everything's just coming naturally. And, you know, somehow if we could take that resistance and take that struggle and take that fight and just sort of turn it off and allow life to sort of come to us and surrender to it and accept it along the way, that's when work becomes play.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when play becomes play.
That's it. Yeah.
There's,
Yeah.
I was just going to mention
ahead.
that book,
Which one?
Flow,
That's what I was going to say. Good.
by the person whose name I could never pronounce, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi or something.
Enough. Close.
He talks about that a lot, flow, and getting into that attitude and that mindset where things just kind of come. And you see that in, you know, sports players and musicians and artists. And there's people who embrace their work that way too, that develop that same kind of attitude, you know.
And they actually, like he actually says that work should be flow. Like that's where you can get the greatest flow if we approached it that way.
I think part of it too, and this is just personal observations, is most of us, I'm going to rephrase that. For a lot of folks, their job at their workplace, there's some competition involved with other people, you know, because we're trying to get ahead, whatever ahead is. We've had other just discussions on you're never going to get ahead. There's always someone in front of you. And Geshe had some good examples of this. But our constant battle to try to get ahead, be it with the person next to us or next cube or in an office or whatever, sets us up in that kind of attitude where we have to kind of fight and push and fight and push. So you don't always see workplaces that are designed that are collaborative. Though they try to do that, you see a lot of times you see some competition, and I think that makes the workplace more stressful sometimes and might make it harder for people to develop that flow or to develop that, you know, that sense of play out of what they're doing. Because you might have all been on a team before at work where it felt really good. You know, you all were kind of moving in the same direction, and there was that sense of flow collectively. But we don't often encounter that in our workplaces. So.
And even play's kind of stressful. I've played games with your brother. Holy
Well,
cow.
yeah, he's pretty competitive. But you know, that's the difference between you know, the good sports team and the ones that struggle is how well they can collaborate and work together and still make it a group flow kind of a thing. So, other thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Hang on 1 second. Otherwise, we make you repeat yourself.
What are your thoughts on right and wrong occupation for those who choose an occupation and then decide that they don't like it later, maybe because of the infrastructure or comrades, or they just actually don't like their job? Why would you stay in that job and try to work your way through it when you could have something better that you like? You know, I've read the book Flow, and I think in order for things to flow, you have to be somewhat enjoying what you're doing, or you're not going to have the flow. So how do you, and I've even read in Buddhism, they talk about right and wrong employment. Sylvia said that she had worked for helping people, like a nurse or. Oh, she's an interpreter, so she helps people interpret their medical problems so that they can get help. And so she feels that that's a useful occupation and that she really enjoys what she does. So I guess my question is, for people that are stuck in things that they don't get any kind of happiness out of, that they're actually doing something for themselves or the community, and they're just stuck, say, ringing up bubble gum all day. Should they stay in that job, or should
Good
they
discussion.
or should they say, oh, maybe I could do something to make my life a little better instead of just suffering through it?
So good question. Thank you.
And that's
You wanna
something that I
start?
think we're going to do go ahead. You said it was a good discussion.
It would be.
It is. There's a lot of stuff there.
So
do you-
Buddhism, right work and wrong work is different than doing something you feel is useful, okay? So, you know, the right work or things that maybe benefit people, and then we're going to have a discussion on if you're ringing up bubble gum, or are you benefiting people? I mean, so y'all can discuss that through, and we'll talk about it. And then wrong work are things that could actually harm people. You make ammunitions. You work in a gun factory. You're
Butcher. And you know,
Butcher.
some of the definitions are more applicable in other countries maybe than they are here too, right? But yeah, the munitions, drug dealer. I don't know. I mean, there's right livelihood, you know, and that I think maybe what you're talking about is how the income, you know, is it being, am I getting paid for something that's ultimately of some kind of benefit or not, right?
still comes to intentions, right? You know, in Buddhism, you don't kill. You know, if you become Buddhist, you can take vows, and that's one of the vows you take, not to kill. I mean, that's flee. I mean, anyhow, we could have a whole discussion on that. But we have a very holy spiritual person who works in the vet office, and he has to assist putting animals to euthanizing animals, and he knows this decision was made. He knows this is what the vets do, and so he decides he's going to make it the best possible experience he can ever make it and pray for those animals. So you can change even, that.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Well, and then I think the other piece of that, your comment is, there's the agency that we're within, right, in terms of right and wrong livelihood. But then there's our own attitude in terms of our job itself, and again, that I think is just a task that we have to decide whether it's something we're going to either enjoy doing or not enjoy doing. And what we're going to try to discuss a little bit is how we can kind of turn that around a little bit. If we've got some areas that make it difficult for us, maybe there's some things that we can do, some practices that we can do to actually make that less difficult for us. So you were going to had a comment earlier, ma'am.
It was just about the perception of how you perceive your job and how you use your job. Jobs can be used in a bunch of different ways. Just selling bubblegum, to have that small interaction with someone while you're selling that bubblegum that can change that person's day.
Change their whole
around,
day.
So it's
Potentially their life.
potential, intention.
Do you want me to repeat that? So she made the comment about
No, that's okay.
even if you're selling bubble gum, it's your intentions, right? Because it's how you interact with that person, it could be. Or the joy. I like bubble gum. The joy bubble gum
Candy.
brings to people. I don't know.
Chris, you're going to say something?
Well, yeah, when I was up in Minnesota trying to find a job down here, one of the first interviews I had was in Providence, Rhode Island. It was Sperry's Submarine Signal Division. Well, they make computers that go on submarines that target missiles and stuff like that. And I actually asked, I wasn't a Buddhist then, or I didn't consider myself a Buddhist then. And I asked him, well, does it bother you that you're making a computer that could be used in a time of war to launch missiles at another ship? Well, something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember everybody there just said, like, no, it doesn't bother me at all. It was like they just had totally pushed away that feeling or something. It was just eerie, and I remember it to this day because and I wasn't even a Buddhist then. It just was strange. And
You didn't know you were
Yeah.
a Buddhist then.
That's right.
Yeah. Huh.
Somebody had a comment back there that.
One of the things I keep hearing us say is work, but we're not talking about work in general. We're not, we talk about people who sell bubble gum. Well, we're not looking at those people. There are people in this world who are not as fortunate as a lot of us who are sitting here, who don't have choices. And so I think that when we look at this spectrum, we need to include those people. Or we say, well, I don't like my job, let me go get another one. Well, some people can't go get another job. So I think we need to make sure that we cover, not just those of us that are blessed that have excess or a life that might be easier than others.
Or flexibility and control, right?
Yeah.
When if you have to be at McDonald's for your 6 a.m. shift, I worked at McDonald's through high school and college. I mean, you're there 5 in the morning, and you couldn't quit to go find another job because you'd go from the pot to the frying pan, So that's right.
I disagreed that you couldn't do it.
Great for
That you couldn't find another job?
I'm not sure this is okay. I respect that statement, and I want to acknowledge it. But I do disagree that everything that we do in life is a choice. We have a thought, and we can choose to change our direction. So it might be challenging, the result of quitting your job to go find another job or to go do something different. And that's generally where a lot of growth happens. But you do have that choice.
Right. And there's
Thank you for that
challenges. I mean, it's harder.
perspective.
It may be harder, but I think though to the same point, and just to narrow the scope here a little bit, we're not talking about the type of work that people do as necessarily, because there's folks that find flow in making hamburgers, and there are CEOs of multinationals that are absolutely miserable with their jobs. So those containers that they're in, it's kind of irrespective of that. It's still what's critical, I think, is still the attitude that we bring to whatever job is at hand, right? And again, with all due respect for the people that are less fortunate than some people, that doesn't mean that job's no lesser than anybody else's job. We're all, our society is built on everybody doing something, or trying to do something, and trying to contribute to that to the best of their ability. So yeah, that's a whole different discussion almost. What we're thinking about just on an individual basis, how do I make whatever life situation I'm in, how can I change that to change my experience towards that?
I think he had his hand up first, and then we'll come back. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, what I was going to say was kind of in response to what he was saying, and I can't speak for the other guy who was talking, but maybe he was talking about more, in our country, for example, would be, even if I have, say I lived in an area where there's only certain jobs available, and it's like, okay, I can quit just this job and go to this job. It's going to be very comparable to this other job. It might not make as much, might, make a little bit more, but it'll be about the same. But I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure there's some third world countries and stuff like that where it's like you have to work 16 hours a day and you have to do a certain thing, and if you don't do that, you're just basically going to starve to death. And you know, I can't fathom living that lifestyle and still being happy, and I don't understand how people do. You know, that's very hard to think about. You know, it's can't put myself in that situation.
No, it's hard.
You know,
difficult.
can't put my. But I think, you know, fairly sure that does exist.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? And
It does.
And what's interesting is we've had this discussion with our teacher, Geshe-la, here. You know, he says we've got first world problems that people in third world countries can't even comprehend. You know, we've got more depression here. We've got more all sorts of psychological problems. Yet I've got 5 Food Lions within 3 square miles of my house. You know, I've got all that availability, but that doesn't take away from the mental stress that we may put ourselves under. And he said folks that leave what we would consider relatively simple lives are often much happier. You know, I was talking to a young lady from Russia about, I did a meditation on water that I'll do sometimes, and she said she remembers having to get up with her family and going every morning and get water, and she actually has very fond memories of those activities. You know, they were happy doing it. That was just what they did. They didn't know otherwise, or didn't have the other ability. And it sounded like they were much more content when she began to describe that than maybe I was in most situations. So.
Somebody had their hand up back there, but since you're right here, if you wanted to say.
Well, I was going to say, kind of along all those lines, there's a book that I read. It's called Leader Without a Title, I think, by Robin Sharma. And it's about intention. It's about, you know, you could be the maid that's cleaning the rooms at the hotel and do it with the best intention, with, you know, with a beautiful smile and happiness and all those things. You could be the CEO, you could be the guy who's sweeping the streets, and it really does come down to intention and where your heart is when you're doing it. If you wake up on Monday morning and you're like, damn it, I gotta go to work today and this is gonna suck, well, it's gonna suck.
Yeah.
You create the world.
That's right.
You create your reality, I guess.
Yeah.
So if if they enjoy going and getting water because that's what they did, you know, that's the happiness and the joy that they're bringing regardless of what the rest of their circumstances are. So.
Which then brings back to play versus work. And even that is that intention. Like if I have to play a game with David's brother, like just thinking about that, my
He's not that
anxiety
bad.
my anxiety
Depends
goes
on the
up,
game.
you know, because it's not going to be play. It's going to be, we're in this to win.
Yeah.
Take it serious.
Well, and you all probably have heard the story of the janitor at Nassau, right? That's kind of an old thing that's gone around. He, you know, when asked by somebody what his job
It was during
He's
President Kennedy.
Yeah. He said, you know, I'm helping to put a man on the moon. And he saw that as what, you know, the work that he was doing as contributing to that process.
It was.
And it really was. You begin looking at world that way, and you begin to see people out there doing these tasks, and you realize how truly important those tasks are that we often will just kind of take for granted and see as unimportant. But you really see it's vital. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to say that I had no intention to insinuate the that job did not have any dignity.
That's
All
right.
jobs
Okay.
have
Correct.
dignity. I
Yep.
was just saying that what this young man has said, and if you create your own reality and you're truly unhappy at your job and you are able to do something else, sometimes you don't have these circumstances where you can change. But instead of suffering, you have to go to work and do the best you can. But in reality, if there is a possibility to do something that you might enjoy, like I'm unemployed right now, I've waited tables, I sold cosmetics at Belk's, I've done all kinds of things. So there is dignity at every work. But if you're not truly happy doing it, I would rather be working for Doctors Without Borders and making $10 an hour than making $60,000 or more working at IT.
That's
was-
right. To your point,
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah.
That's my point, is I'm happier doing something else. It's not about the money, but sometimes it is about the money,
Sure.
you know?
The
and-
money makes it tricky, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you know, you have to decide, how much do I really need? What's really necessary? You don't need a 17, room house with 3 garages, three cars, and all this ridiculous stuff that they advertise on TV nonstop. You know, it's like, if everything in your house isn't from rubes to go, how could you possibly have anyone over?
Yeah, that's right.
And then there are some work environments that are just toxic, and if
Yeah.
people can leave, certainly.
Yeah,
Well,
and I
and
think
you-
it's just good to leave if it is a toxic situation, which
Sure.
I-
What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, and that was, what you were going to mention, I think, too, in terms of our sense of well-being. Or that might
Yeah, because
kind of segue into that a little bit.
Yeah, it does segue into that because, it's not just work versus play, because play gives us enjoyment, and work gives us enjoyment. There's studies, many studies that have shown the enjoyment we get from work. Then there's many studies that have shown, work can, it impacts our sense of well-being. And some of you may have been in situations where your well-being was enhanced by being there at work, and it could be that your well-being was detracted by being there at work. I don't know if anybody has any stories they'd like to share or how you think that's impacted. Happiness is one piece, right? But there's other things too where our well-being can be affected. And we keep saying work, but those of you, the younger people in here, school can become work or play, right? Depending on how you look at it. So you can use that situation too if you have anything you'd like to share or say. But have you been in a situation where your well-being was impacted one way or the other? Or people whose well-beings were impacted?
For example, one time I had taken a job as a night auditor at a hotel, so I had to be there all night, which, for one thing, I guess you could try to make it healthy by getting your sleep schedule right, but I tried that. And then on my off days, I found it was like impossible to just stay up all night when no one else was doing anything. So I got to the point to where I would be on the night audit schedule, and then I would have to flip my schedule on my 2 days off, which was very hard to do because it felt like you had jet lag 2 or 3 days out of the week. So that in and of itself was unhealthy enough, but then at the same time, I was working in a toxic work environment, where there was a lot of people there who I guess really didn't value their job or value having a good work ethic or doing a good job. And on top of that, the management, if something would go wrong, and there would be emails going back and forth with the big bosses attached and whatnot, they would try to blame the people below them for stuff that really wasn't their fault, and it got to the point with me where I would just, if they would try to cast blame on me for something that I know really wasn't my fault, or they're trying to put more on me than was necessary to get themselves out of trouble, I was just getting so angry, I would just fire the emails back at them and be like, what are they going to do, fire me? And I just, that was an unhealthy work environment for me. And, I needed to get out of that work environment. Sure, I could have stayed in that work environment, and, money was a little bit better because I was working overnight and whatnot. But,
Right, you get that differential.
Right, exactly. But it just wasn't worth it, because it was compromising my my mental, physical health to a certain extent. The job I'm at now, it's a different work. It's another hotel, but it's I have bosses that are very nice. We all get along. It's a very good work environment as far as coworkers and whatnot. But there's at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that goes on that I don't like, and I don't like how they're handling it. That really bothers me, and I kind of have to weigh it out. I deal with this stuff that I don't like, and I don't appreciate the way that we're doing it and carrying on our business with our clients, which annoys me. Then on the other hand, I could go to another work environment and it end up being a toxic work environment where, the bosses aren't treating the employees right, the employees don't have a good work ethic. There's just a lot of factors, So I think for me to be at a point to where I get a new job because my job is so unbearable, it has to be pretty bad. Because, you know, if it gets to a point where my health is compromised, yeah, I'll do it. So that's kind of how I view it.
But otherwise, we balance, right? Which was one of the terms used. You balance as best you can.
And there, well, I was going to say, and we don't necessarily, this is Karen's thing more so, is that we don't necessarily equate health and well-being. Those might be two kind of separate things, even though sometimes we lump them together. There are some unhealthy work practices, you know, rotating shifts and working crazy shifts and hours and hazards and things, but asbestos. But you know, having a sense of well-being is sometimes a little bit different.
And
The
that's
two
a-
impact each other.
That was a great example because you have the physical impact of shift works. I mean, I forget the percentage of people who work shifts. Oh my gosh. You know, so you have like a sleep and your eating and your GI. I mean, so you have those health impacts, right? But then you also describe that emotional impact. You have that plus the unhealthy relationships that are going on. So you get angry, you know, with what you're seeing and what you have. So your emotional health suffers. Hard to find meaningful work in that situation. So your spiritual health suffers, and then your social health suffers because that it is toxic and it's contagious. So you bring that negative environment into your social world. I mean, everything becomes, you know, and plus you're working night shift, so your social world is already impacted. So it impacts really, truly, it does, doesn't it? All levels of well-being.
Let's kind of shift things a little bit, and not to, we didn't mean to pick on the candy thing. We work for some candy companies, and it's
You
interesting.
do.
Some of the workers are miserable, and the CEO seems to love it. So, you know, I don't know how that kind of worked out sometimes, but that was a perfect example of it. So how do we bring more meaning to what, let's kind of abandon the thought of looking for more employment. And let's just say that whatever job we're in. How can we turn that around to make that more meaningful for us? If we're like that boy who was making drugs and it just he shifted his perspective. Are there things that you can do at your current situation that you can begin to make more meaning in the work that you do? So do you want to break out, or do we have time for that?
I probably don't have too much time for that.
What
What do you guys want to do? Well, probably should finish in about 10 minutes or so.
So let's talk about it.
Okay.
Because we're at the halfway point now. Are there things? Now we're talking about changing your perspective, right? We're not changing the work environment, but we're just changing our attitude, because we've kind of boiled it down to a lot of it has to do with our attitude and intention and the perspective that we bring to that activity. So what are some things that we can do to begin changing that? Yes, ma'am. Let's see, there he is. Thank you.
Hello? Okay.
Yeah.
When I was in school, I remember saying I would never work in a corporate company. I wanted to save the world. I was a psych major. I was going to go nonprofit all the way, and now I work in a pharmaceutical company.
Sold out. No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking.
But as I've gotten older, I'm 34 now. My dad has Parkinson's, so when I hire, when I hire a neurologist, there's something very cool about thinking that we're helping with drug development. And even outside of the bigger picture, I do think that there are so many times that I get to help people just one-on-one and make a difference when I talk to people and help them with career transitions, or help my peers, or just bring whatever I wanted to do in a less corporate environment to my day-to-day, and just make the best of it that I can.
So you've created some meaning, okay?
And it doesn't have to be big meaning, although you created both. But you can look at just the difference you make when you have interactions, and how you come to those interactions can enhance or detract from somebody's well-being, make their day, plus give you that intention. Oh,
I'm here.
Yeah.
So I guess my career was
is mental health and social work therapist. And I got to a point where I was very burnt out in my career. And so I would drive to work and just be like, oh, I don't want to do this. I want to go home. I am done with this. I just, my whole self-talk all the way to work was not building me up for a happy Monday. So I did gratitude attitudes all the way to work. Like, what am I thankful for? Where's the silver lining? This kid is really making progress with this. I'm going to do this today. And just like my 15-minute drive was nothing about all the things I hated. It was all my attention on all the things that I was grateful for and the progress that I could see. And it really did change my Mondays and got me through to the point where I was able to leave the job and go chase my dreams and all the fun stuff. But I think, that self-talk is a really big, can get out of control, and especially if we don't listen or not mindful to it.
Yeah.
And I just got in a rut, and that 15 minutes of just dedicating myself to finding the good parts of the Monday just really helped turn
That's
me around.
excellent.
Great tool.
Yeah, that's excellent.
And one factor that, just to emphasize, that positive self-talk wasn't made up. Like, you're not saying this is the greatest job and I'm the greatest person at this job. You're looking at realistically at where's the good. You're finding that good and changing that negative. It's huge.
I was going to say the same point. So two pieces for me. I actually, once I started meditating about 6-7 months ago, I found that I needed to add that to my work life. So we're lucky enough we work in an environment where we have some little breakout rooms, and so I schedule 30 minutes when I get to work. My 8 to 8:30 is not anything work related, and my 5 to 5:30 is nothing work related, so that I can start my day with intention and leave my day to enter my family with intention, which has really changed. I do enjoy my work, so I am lucky with that. I have not in the past, but at the same time, with the gratitude attitude, I have a subset of engineers. I work for an open source technology company, and their work can get pretty intense sometimes. And so we've actually implemented that into, or at least with my engineers, into our development plan. So when they come in and they have a problem, we really try to talk about, how can we solve it, but how can we see the silver lining in what we're currently doing. And each quarter we've now put together like a quick little show on what our open source technology is doing around the world. So to see a video where have kids being able to develop, and maybe they're missing a limb and they're able to help develop a cool color and pattern for this limb that they're going to add, or we're able to donate money to third world projects where individuals are starting companies, or those type of things. So we bring those into our quarterly meetings to remind people of the good that we're doing, even though, like we said, we're the janitor helping. We're trying to remind people, like, we are the janitor helping get the man on the moon, and it makes my life so much more fulfilling. But that's really just changed over the last year of being there. And so I think those types of things, but helping other people see those as well is my big win for the end of the day. Every day, if I can do that.
Oh, that's great.
And they've shown that it's small, right? You have to kind of start small. Like Karen said, you don't want to exaggerate what you're confronted with and making it real positive. But if you can begin to just kind of change things, and then as you repeat that over and over and over again, which is the whole point of some of the analytical meditations, right? We have the negative talk that goes on throughout the day. We're like magnets, right? They say Velcro for negative and Teflon for the positive. So when we begin to kind of change that talk a little bit to be a little bit more positive, and we can kind of work with that and roll that over and over and over again, it begins to kind of build some momentum. And it just becomes a very natural process. So.
Say too, just another suggestion if anybody needs it. If you ever have, in my day, I have too many meetings, and there's a couple of them that really just light me up sometimes. I intentionally schedule like 10-minute break after those so I can do like a 3-minute meditation, and it's really changed my outlook on those meetings, because I really would I'd be up to here after some of them, and that's even just that little small 3 minutes is kind of day saving.
Yeah.
Google actually said take 6 seconds. You don't have 3 minutes. 6 seconds can make all the difference to flip that.
I was going to say, I was in a situation where I had a very toxic job, but I made good money, and at the time, at that period of my life, I was divorced, and kids and every other thing, and my divorce almost put me in bankruptcy. So it was very hard, to try to stop and think about changing jobs. But at one point I thought I was going to actually have a heart attack and die. So I was like, okay, but in making that decision, it was very scary because, I dropped my salary by probably $20,000, which was significant for a single mom. And, but it was so worthwhile. Like, the company I work for now is just wonderful, and they're supportive. And like, just recently, they'll send out Monday morning motivation just in an email with just like a neat little, inspirational note and things like that. And we're very much work as a team. And like, with a lot of my clients, I've got a lot of clients who are younger than me who haven't been in the industry, so I try to do a lot of mentoring, because I feel like there's that kind of a disconnection in the world these days where you've got kind of the different generations in the workforce, some leaving, some coming, and some of that mentoring has gotten lost along the way. So that gives me a lot of joy, and is helping somebody straight out of college who's like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what I don't know, kind of a thing. And so I think whenever you can help another person be better at their job, I think it makes your job that much more meaningful.
Sure.
So.
Sure.
Yes,
And it's back to
great.
what Lise was talking about before, and they say that, I'm going to botch this up though, they say it all the time, right? All happiness comes from what we give to others, and all of our misery comes from focusing on ourselves. The more we can push things outwardly as acts of generosity or service or whatever that may be, it just increases our level of happiness. So.
And this is huge discussion. We bring this to the workplace, right? That's our goals and our intentions. And we do some work in a pharmaceutical company where we were trying to show meaning and purpose. And nope, you're getting paid. As long as you're getting paid for it, it's not a service. You're doing it because you have to. And it was really difficult to switch to say, no, you're making drugs that benefit people or animals or whoever you're making those drugs for. And it's a hard switch, and but can be done.
Yeah. Have I know a number of you have heard our Lama Zopa Rinpoche talk before, and if you've ever sat through one of his dedications, they take a long time, because he casts the net very far. When I heard him dedicate a stupa, and it was like a 2-hour dedication, and he had the people that were making the cement and everybody that could possibly have had anything to do with making that stupa
The
was
worms
included.
that were moved.
Yeah.
I mean, by the end, I was practically sobbing, if you
was-
really think about it. Wow.
Everyone. So the question I always ask is, what prevents me, if I'm on, let's say I am on that receiving end from, if I were one of the ones named by the work that we do, what would keep me from being able to see that same connection going back to him? Why shouldn't I be able to make my work in such a way that it ultimately ends up making that stupa or doing that thing that they described, right? If he can see that clearly, that should be my goal, is to be able to see that connection going back to him. We all have the ability to make the connection to something deeper, even if our immediate supervisors or the boss or the CEO of the company hasn't made that mission visible for people. It doesn't prevent that individual person, like that janitor, from seeing that their job is one that's being of benefit on a greater level than what other people might see.
So despite not having control or the decision making we may like to have in our jobs, wasn't it Frankl that said, I get the quote wrong, but you can't, you can control whatever, but you can't take this away. Like, I can control this, so our intentions, what we bring to the work is here, regardless of what's out there.
And we use sometimes this 16 guideline book. We found it to be of benefit. They talk, there's, how we think becomes how we act becomes how we relate to others and how we find meaning. So there's 4 wisdom themes, but within it there's things like patience, generosity, gratitude, kindness, right speech. And we try to take all of those components and say, how can I bring that to the work that we do, or how can I make that incorporated into what I do, even if my work doesn't support that, or the workplace, I should say, doesn't support that, doesn't go along with that. So.
And this is Lama Zopa's, right? I mean, he brought this. I mean, it was written in 8th century Tibet or whatever, but he's the one that brought this to the Western world and revamped it and revised it. So very instrumental in the 16 guidelines.
Any other thoughts? We just kind of skimmed over things here, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Elise, thank you. She remembered.
I guess one thing that I think about is the big question from as long as man has existed was, what's the meaning of life? Why am I here? And different philosophies and religions try to answer that, or can't, or don't even try. And I could be wrong, but my understanding of the Buddhist attitude of what is the meaning of life is there is no meaning out there. It's up to each of us to create the meaning.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that ties in with our
Absolutely.
attitudes of work and everyday life.
And work takes up such a big chunk of that, so creating the meaning for that is huge. Yeah. Great.
So
Thanks.
there's your mud out there, right, from which the lotus comes. So there's all, you spend however much time a day at work. Might as well make the most of it. Make it an opportunity to practice.
So we could end with, if you have a gold prayer book in front of you on page 246, unless anybody else had anything they wanted to add. Did you want to do one more meditation before we do this? Just a quick something, or?
We could.
Depends how
Yeah,
quick.
yeah. We can make this one quick, but it's an analytical that we've used. We teach this in Meditation 101 too. So just take a moment to kind of get yourself comfortable, and we'll take a few breaths in and out. Just kind of relax our mind a little. And spend a moment or two thinking about maybe one of your work experiences they've had recently, especially something that might have been a difficult situation. Maybe where you became impatient, you lost your temper, and you've seen other people as being the problem. You might have even lashed out to somebody verbally. So try to play that thought over in your head, just as if you're experiencing it now. Remember what happened from beginning to end, and then watch and observe your mind as you replay the situation and see your behavior. Now think about the disadvantages and the harmful nature of your negative response. Think about how you felt, maybe when you're impatient or angry. Did it make you feel happy, comfortable, at peace? If that angry feeling led to angry words and actions, what effect did they have on you, on others around? Did it make them happy? Did it make the situation easier? Did it bring the situation to a positive solution? Did it help yourself and everyone else feel good and understand each other better? Now think about how you might have played that differently. With a calm, balanced, open attitude, without anger, impatience, or resentment. And then think about how your and others' experiences of the situation might have been completely different had you acted differently. Now replay the entire situation in your mind from beginning to end, imagining it completely different. Imagine yourself reacting perfectly with warmth, openness, calm, balance, without anger or agitation. Is the outcome any different? How do you feel about yourself at the end of that interchange? Are you pleased or disappointed? What kind of experience do others around you have as they replay that? Positive or negative? So make a strong determination that the next time you encounter difficulties, that you test your practice of patience. You'll take a breath, step back, try to respond with openness and patience, just as you did in a meditation. Keeping in mind that you're the one in control. You're in control of your anger and control of your mind. And make a strong determination that each time you find yourself responding with impatience, agitation, or anger in the future, you'll try to practice this same meditation to gradually overcome the negative responses. And train your mind to respond with kindness, balance, and patience.
That was nice, thank you.
All right. Do you want to?
So, page 246, we say this prayer every Sunday at the end, and what if you could say it every day before you went to work, and let this be our attitude as we go to work. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. Those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. 7 Tara mantras for Geshe-la's long, healthy life. Our teachers, long, healthy life, all of our teachers, and you can expand that out. And Tara is the female kind of side of Buddha. And so this is just a lovely prayer that made people, she is a Buddha of action. So may her action help us to be healthy and help our teachers to be healthy. So it's a simple little prayer that if you don't know it, you can just listen. After the second or third one, you'll be able to say it. Om Tari Tu Tari Tu Re So Ha. 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 Thank you for coming.
For
Whatever
coming
your
out on Labor Day.
intentions were, my goodness, on Labor Day. So enjoy the rest of your
Labor Day
nice
weekend.
long weekend. Think about the intention you'll bring Tuesday to the workplace.